to what has not been said in the testimony. I know written testimony.
My name is Berg, and I'm here to play picture dictionary with you. If we all had a picture dictionary before us, and you looked up the word sleight of hand, dirty hands, and bad faith, let's look up bait and switch. Let's look up lost leader. A 7th grader knows what those terms are in a 101 civics class. I'm going to address, Vice Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to address Senator Sloan, because I believe he may understand this, members, no offense. But Senator Sloan, taxpayers were apprised on December 2nd of 2010 that their tax dollars were used for a commission report of which Governor Lingle said, I don't believe the city's numbers, I don't trust the city's numbers, in fact they're flawed. And with taxpayers' money, our executive branch for the state of Hawaii embarked upon using our dollars to tell every taxpayer, you have a right to react to my report. Now the city charter in the city county of Honolulu affords that. So 3 weeks after that report was released, Senator Sloan, members, I was elected in a special election. And I immediately was told by the district I represented that they wanted another vote, and that the so-called steel wheel on steel rails was not the technology they wanted to support. In the year 2010, the City and County of Honolulu HART Rapid Transit Division was still in charge at that time, had kept proclaiming that in 2008, every taxpayer in the City and County of Honolulu was locked into steel wheel on steel rail. From 2008, and you just heard it when our tax dollars were to pay for 4 council members to go to Washington, D.C., they decided in the year 2015 to go ask the same question that they claimed they had the answer for in 2011. In 2011 is when my resolution was heard to react to the governor's financial report. We, the people of the citizens of the City and County of Honolulu, Chair, when we were apprised of Governor Lingle's financial statement that the city's numbers were flawed, not accurate, by 1.7 billion on the low end, billions on the high end. We're not discussing technology, rail technology, what have you. Chair, what was discussed was that it was supposed to be that I've heard you, Chair Takuda, say 4 times in this hearing, the will of the people and the people's decision. The people were never allowed, Chair and members, to ever come to this table. So when I introduced 11-328, it was heard on November 2nd, 2011, members. November 2nd, 2011. Council members had made statements that the public and the people had no right, members, to react to the executive branch's report that was paid for by taxpayers' dollars. The full funding grant agreement has regulations in it, and under Chapter 5, it says if you have a scope of project and you haven't signed your full funding grant agreement, you are not locked in. Chapter 5 of the rules say, and offered the citizenry of Honolulu on November 2nd, 2011, that if we did advance a resolution to change the language from one rail system to another, it says in Chapter 5, clearly, there's no penalty, you don't forfeit any monies, you return nothing, you don't fall to the end of the line. On November 2nd, 2011, the people's right to have this measure on the ballot was taken away from them. And for you folks to want to deliberate, to say you wanted to advance and allow for these GET extensions, what have you, go forward, you yourselves would be culpable in acting in bad faith. The broken treaty of whereby the ink isn't even dry, you will be culpable. You will have condoned it. Your blood will be in that ink on a broken treaty, because everything about this is financially not sound. From the 450 line of credit was after the vote in '08. The raising of the debt service ceiling, after the vote in '08. The taking of all rail transit operations from 11 to 18%, after the vote in '08. Nothing about this panned out, and Governor Lingle told us. So I come before you in my testimony that under all circumstances, if you want to be in the picture dictionary, we'll give you a name. Or you can work with the public and give remedy. By the way, urban maglev was invented by Americans in 1966. So when the city and county of Honoulu told the voters that it was proprietary, they lied through their teeth. So in bad faith, everything about this full funding grant agreement has been advanced in bad faith. And the reason I come before you is my testimony has a letter in it today, of which is being sent today to the Federal Transit Administrator, Teresa McMillan. And in it, I'm proclaiming that I'm a direct witness to a crime. The crime being is that a particular council member on November 2nd, 2011, gave misrepresentation of the full funding grant agreement. And it says in the language of the full funding grant agreement that, again, if we were to change the technology before it was signed, Judge Judy knows it from here. We had no contract in 2011, and the federal government said we could change the technology. So when I said, what can we do today? We can get out of this full funding grant agreement at no penalty by merely exercising that it was advanced in bad faith. And we have it on tape, we have it on record, and there were outright deceitful statements made because the Federal Transit Administration won't back up the statements made that the people had no right. According to the federal government, if you believe this, the people had no right to react to Governor Lingle's paid for by tax dollars report saying, again, this was flawed. So I'm going to wrap up with something you don't know.
And I was very interested to hear that steel on steel was not one of them, because there's so many cheaper, more modern alternatives to the technology that we're currently pursuing. I'm very concerned as a taxpayer about the cost overruns.
A locomotive producer in central China's Hunan province on Friday rolled out a low-cost magnetically levitated or maglev train. As China Report shows you, the train is more environmental friendly than conventional trains.
The three-carriage train is designed to run at a maximum speed of 100 km per hour and carry 600 passengers. According to the general manager of the manufacturer, the train is quieter and more environmentally friendly than the current light rail train. And different from light rail, which moves forward by using friction between its wheels and the railway tracks, a maglev train replaces wheels by electromagnets and levitates on the guideway. The features make it more flexible and suitable for more landscapes. The manufacturer is very confident about the train's future market.
I believe in the coming 3 to 5 years, there will be a demand boom for such trains. It will dramatically change the transportation system, and it will be a new choice for city transportation solution.
China is one of the few countries that have applied maglev technology. Its capital Beijing is building a maglev route through the city. The line will be operational next year. If so, it will be the second Chinese city to run a maglev line following the metropolis Shanghai in East China. A German-made maglev went into operation on December 31st, 2002. It is also the world's first commercial maglev system.
How do you make ends meet if you're only making less than $50,000 a year and we want to increase taxes? I'm sorry, I'm a little upset because I don't know how people are going to make ends meet. You know, the people who are asking for these surcharges, they're set. They're making $1 million a year, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They don't know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck.
I wish I could support it, but I can't support it the way it's configured now. But I worry that the project that's been started now and that people are supporting in Congress from our delegation, the people of Hawaii can't afford it.
Sure.
Let's not put the onus of responsibility
on one person.
On Councilmember Anderson, when the onus is that, if you think about it, it's on us. Now, the caller, in 2008, at a 53-47 majority, the steel wheel on steel rail advanced. Now, in 2008, do you really believe the Federal Transit Administration that the position would be until the full funding grant agreement was signed in 2012, 4 years later, caller, 4 years later? Do you believe that the federal government had said in that 4-year duration, you, the people, the taxpayers, no matter what pans out, you're locked in and you have no right of remedy, recourse to, quote, petition for a waiver and amend the full funding grant agreement? Do you think we were locked in for 4 years?
No. No.
So this is not a good way to do the job. You have no money to construct the rail. And who's going to pay for the interest? You're going to mortgage our kids, continue mortgage our kids' future? We're exporting our kids beside our trash. That's our #1 export.
It's a 2-minute snippet of him on November 2nd, 2011, proclaiming that of his multiple trips to D.C., that on this particular one, before this hearing, that we, the people, had no right for recourse or remedy on Governor Lingle's report. And that if we were to allow the people to react to that report and say, something's amiss, Councilman Anderson says we'll forfeit everything. So, hear it for yourself.
Okay. I've asked the question of the FTA that if, for some reason, this body should place on the 2012 general election ballot a question regarding Honolulu's mass transit project, and if that question should be in conflict with the 2008 ballot question regarding steel on steel that passed, could we perhaps be in jeopardy of the federal government requiring Honolulu to reimburse the upwards of $200 million that the federal government has given us thus far for our project? The answer from the FTA was yes. They would come back to Honolulu and they would require us to repay every cent that they have given us thus far for this project. Mr. Chairman, that's a grave concern for me. And that's not a hypothetical, Mr. Chairman. That's a definitive. The federal government has assured me that if, in fact, a charter amendment like this passes, they will indeed come back and require us to repay them. That's not an assumption. It's a fact. It came from the FTA themselves. In light of that fact, Mr. Chairman, I am unable to support this particular measure moving forward at this time. I think the implications are great. I believe that it's a certainty that the federal government will in fact require Honolulu and our taxpayers to reimburse them for the federal monies that have been expended on our project thus far. And Mr. Chairman, those consequences will be dire to the people of the city and county of Honolulu. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I will not be able to support this going forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. What he basically said was he spoke with people at the FTA, Federal Transportation Authority, and they informed him that should Hawaii try to opt out of steel on steel, the feds would reclaim the $200 million they gave to Hawaii. So, these are emails that I printed out with my correspondence to Pinocchio Anderson. So I would like to read what happened. I sent him my first email on Monday, and I said, on Saturday, February 28th, Tom Berg will be a guest on my show discussing the rail fraud. We will also address the issue of you not disclosing who made and where the statement can be found substantiated in writing that we had no right to decide what rail system we wanted on the Guideway in 2011 without some sort of penalty locking us in for 4 years from the 2008 vote for the steel-on-steel to the FFGA signing in 2012. If you cannot explain this or cannot name the individual, we can only assume it was your lie made to make people believe something you knew that we did not. Hopefully, you will call in and explain why you should not be labeled a liar. Health Talk, Saturday morning, 8 to 9, KWAI. The call-in number, 524-1080. Have a nice week, and hopefully we'll see you on the radio. The response from Pinocchio. You may label me what you like. I am not legitimizing your show by participating in this rubbish. Only 2 people, you and Tom, will be listening to your show on Saturday, and I have no intention of being the cause of increasing your audience to 3. This is an insult to every one of you that are hearing this right now. I responded and said I would think it would be better to aspire to be an honest person instead of a wannabe. One always has the choice. I said, who at the FDA said what, and where is the document of proof to back up your statement, which will be played on my show?
The Council also approved a resolution to send 4 of its members to D.C. to meet with the Federal Transit Administration. One of the questions to be asked, is it too late for Honolulu to change technology for its mass transit system?
In all of the discussions with FTA officials in D.C. that I've had, and I've had many, I have every reason to believe from what I've heard thus far that no, we cannot change technologies.
Last chance to put your money where your big mouth is. Response. Am extremely tied up with real issues and much too busy to be bothered with your rubbish. And he addressed it to Hash, H-A-S-H. Now, he still hasn't dealt with the issue of who he spoke with. And in my opinion, if I made a statement here and I said, I heard there was going to be a blizzard tomorrow, and someone said to me, who told you that? And I said, well, I was talking with Bob at the studio, and Bob told me there would be a blizzard tomorrow. And I said, well, Bob at K108 told me that. You could then pick up the phone and you could say, Bob, did you tell Hesh there's going to be a blizzard tomorrow? And Bob would say, yeah, I did. Okay, sure, done, over. No discussion, right? But here's a guy, he says, Hash, am extremely tied up with real issues. Because lying is not a real issue. You got that? And much too busy to be bothered with your rubbish. So I wrote back and I said, first of all, it's Hesh. And second of all, after Saturday, many, many people will be fed up with your trash and hopefully get rid of you next time around. Not having the guts to defend what you said and cite the alleged sources you referred to is the worst of the worst pilau. And what's worse is only a liar and a coward runs and hides. It's okay if you don't defend yourself. The people who elected you will know the horrible mistake they made by you not owning up. He writes back and he writes, hash or hesh, whatever. The people who elected me did so by an overwhelming majority, twice. Assure you, I am not hiding. I owe you absolutely nothing. If I choose to oblige you with my time, it'll be on my terms at a time and place of my choosing. So I wrote back and I said, yo, Pinocchio, what is the name of the person at the FDA that said the federal government would make Hawaii pay back $200 million?
They would come back to Honolulu and they would require us to repay every cent that they have given us thus far for this project.
You said it. I have it on tape. The people will hear it on Saturday. If you did not lie, you should have no problem saying who told you that. Now, I was right to the point. I didn't make anything up. All I want to know was, who told you this? That's all. Why do I want to know who told you this? Because I would then call someone at the Federal Transportation Authority, and I would say, did you say such and such? And they would say, yeah, I did. And I would say, okay, fine. Then I don't have a problem with Ikaika Anderson. Last night, because I sent out emails to our two senators in Congress, to Tulsi Gabbard, to politicians, senators here in the state, to the governor and the mayor, and I received a phone call from Senator Mike Gabbard's office. And what I was informed of was, in the county charter, the Honolulu County or City Charter, Section 28 says, this was in the beginning, should we adopt a rail system, the format that we have to go with is steel on steel, unless the people wish to modify the charter and change the option. So why then didn't Mr. Know-it-all, Pinocchio Ikaika Anderson, research that for himself and find that out? Why, when he made that testimony, which you heard at the city council?
I believe that it's a certainty that the federal government will in fact require Honolulu and our taxpayers to reimburse them for the federal monies that have been expended on our project thus far.
Why didn't he say, because it's in the charter, I cannot support a change? Why didn't he say, even though it's in the charter, it can still be left up to the people to make a change? Why he didn't say that was because he doesn't give a crap about the people. See, now I can only speculate by saying we are looking at kickbacks all the way down the line. Okay, so the issue here is, why would Ikaika Anderson lie in the first place? Why doesn't he have the wherewithal to even do his own homework? Why could he not find out that there was something in the charter that defined the terms? And if he did find that out, which he never bothered to do, why wouldn't he tell the people that it's up to the people to change if they want to change? To me, I see fraud all the way down the line. I see kickbacks. I see payoffs. I don't have any proof of that. But if a person is a liar is a liar. You can't trust him. If a guy can't be honest, if the guy can't do his homework, what kind of an idiot elects a super idiot to an office to represent the people? This guy does not represent the people. He is representing corporations. And if you represent a corporation, guess what winds up in your back pocket? Little green things with faces on it. That's what winds up. I got a caller, 524-1080. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, yeah, Pinocchio Kaiki Anderson. Yeah, he's one of the biggest liars. I was at the hearings where they had to remember sit and lie laws. You get it, sit and lie. That's what he does.
I just came back from Washington, D.C., and I also met with the FTA, as well as appropriations representatives from both the House and the Senate. And I just wanted to affirm the representations of the Vice Chair. Should we choose to revisit this project in any way whatsoever, it's seen as a lack of confidence on Honolulu's part for this project.
At this particular juncture, although we'll ask the question again, I don't think we're going to hear anything different than we've heard in the past, that at this stage of the project, we cannot change the technology.
That contract is in stone, just as Mayor Caldwell said, and the council members, 4 of them that went to D.C., they're still there. They've portrayed this on the news that, well, folks, we've looked into the switching of this rail technology, but we're locked in because we signed an agreement. That's my point, Hesh, of playing Councilmember Anderson at 2011, is that we, the people, should be outraged. We were denied the right in this whole play of branches of government. It was our responsibility to show up at that hearing, which many did. It was, however, in bad faith when Councilmember Anderson, here's now where we get into the rules of the full funding grant agreement, Hesh, if I may, is that why are we here talking about this? Why would we sit there and go back in time? That's not getting us anywhere. Well, the point is in the rules of the full funding grant agreement, it has a clause in there that if the contract, called the full funding grant agreement, was advanced in bad faith or misrepresented, it was my complaint that on November 2nd, 2011 of that hearing, Councilmember Anderson gave misinformation, misrepresented the terms, because as I just said, we already have to plead with the federal government, don't penalize us, because we have to change the operational date. We didn't have our finances in order. Now, I'm going to come full circle back to Governor Lingo's report. She said back then on December 2nd in that report of 2010.
But the governor says before she can sign off on rail, the state needs to review all 13,000 public comments on the project, as well as do an independent financial review.
And the monies you're taking from the bus, the feds won't agree to it. Well, let's fast forward. We're 5 years into it down the road, and the council hasn't still figured out how to make amends on that same issue of the bus money. So what are they gonna do, Hesh? They're going to extend the tax, maybe do property taxes.
Well, that's what they want to do. They want to extend the tax 25 years.
But the recourse is, all of us listening to this could say, wait a minute, I'm holding up my hand now. The statute of limitations is no longer in play because when the council members used taxpayers' dollars to revisit this and said, we're going there to actually ask the very question, can we switch the rail technology to another? Bam, that opens this up for any class action suit, any recourse we, the people, want. We could say to the FTA, I'm holding up Councilmember Anderson's testimony here under oath when he was sworn into office. All we're asking to put this to rest, and I hope people call in, is Councilmember Anderson, on November 2nd when you made the statement, I and my staff banged on your door and said, who did you talk to? And for the next 3 years, I've been doing it. I've been contacting the FTA and everybody under the sun, and guess what? They all said, you signed a contract in December of 2012, meaning you always had reserved the right to switch your rail system at all times without penalty. And that's why no one's coming forward, Ash, to refute, rebut me at all. And because I'm finding that this grant was advanced of ill will, let's get out of this agreement and now open it up, and we, the people, can get into the 21st century.
Well, isn't it? Weren't we allegedly a government of, for, and by the people?
Let's exercise it.
Yeah, I think so.
So why not unanimous decision? Said Manahan. I went to Honoulu, their transportation committee, unanimous. Let's get it together. Kapolei went to them. They're asking HART. They're having a town hall meeting, as Frank and I will both be giving presentations.
It's the way it's got to be.
So board by board members, neighborhood board, get your chair to put it on the agenda. And Hesh should see the first person who, of all in the media, who has saw this, read it, and said, aha, this is a Perry Mason moment. We have impropriety. And we do have relief, because when we've been told you can't change this, you can't do that, we're stuck with this, folks, they're the ones pouring the sand over us while we're sinking in quicksand. All we have to do is take the sand out of their hands.
Really?
So we would know. We would know immediately. If Councilmember Anderson could disclose the source, we'd say, you know what? Maybe he got misinformed, because someone's head's going to roll. Because if you go to my contacts, whatever, you'll get the same, and all my YouTubes, I put it up there. Here's the link, folks. Read the rules, the administrative guideline of how to amend your full funding grant agreement. And it tells you specifically, folks, a change in scope is your rail system, and it's a big deal. All you got to do is notify both chambers of Congress. There's no penalty. There's no forfeiture. There's no going to the back of the end of the line. Threat. And that's where the FTA is saying, look, that's not our jurisdiction. They're not going to come down here running and put handcuffs on Anderson or anybody. It's us, the people, who have the final say.
Absolutely.
And we just got to get up, rise up, and stand up.
You know what's really interesting? And as long as you're on the line, we'll just stay here for a minute.
Sure.
I asked Tom, I see ads on TV about this lady Mangieri or something.
Gina, the reporter.
Yeah, she's an investigative reporter. I said to him, did you ever think of contacting her? And he said, I have contacted everyone in media, and nobody wants to touch it.
They'll lose their sponsors, Hesh.
Yeah, obviously. See, it's like my favorite expression. In God we trust, all others pay cash. So when money is involved, integrity is not involved. Right. Do you understand?
Right.
This is what's happening. So where we used to be a government of, for, and by the people, it is now a government of, for, and by the corporation.
Because, with this city council, they're all crooks. There's no good ones. The mayors, this is as bad as we get. This guy's beginning to make Mufi Hanneman look like a choir boy. This is how low we've become. And then you see him speaking at Foster Botanical Garden, that being the mayor, with the three choices: kill it, tear everything down, raise the property taxes, or increase the GET tax. Of course, he wants to increase the GET tax. So my only hope is that David Ige, who seems to have been somebody fiscally conservative, will somehow or another intervene in this, although it seems like he's all in favor of it just by some of the statements that he's made the few times he makes a TV appearance. But, this thing is going to bankrupt the city. It's going to bankrupt the state. People. I thought Danny Noy was like the beloved Hawaii son. And now he's blaming Danny Noy, a guy who's been dead for several years, that this is all his fault. I'm surprised you're not blaming Bush over this. Tom, you got to get back into office, brother. This state needs people like you. We're with exception of a few, we're screwed politically. We're in deep kimchi, as they say. And when I say Mufi Hanneman's looking like a choir boy, compared to the person who's making him look like that, folks, we're in big trouble. Gentlemen, God bless you both, and I'll be listening to the show. Thank you, guys.
We got another caller.
Go ahead.
Caller, hold on. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. You do not sound like Ikaika Anderson, but that's okay.
I just got on the radio about 5 minutes ago.
Oh, no, yes.
So anyway, about several things. I I did hear Sylvia Luke, the Senate Ways and Means had combined with Sylvia Luke's, she's House Finance Chair, and Sylvia had the same question to Kirk Caldwell that I had, that if we voted on it, we should vote on it again.
Right.
Well, caller, you nailed it, because back in 2011 of November 2nd, Frank, who called in earlier, we did our research. Folks, as soon as I got into office, I responded to Governor Lingo's report, and it took me months to craft this legislation, months. It went back and forth, back and forth. This was to go on the ballot. This was a ballot initiative. It's huge, big document. And so after it finally got put together as a package, you mentioned, the mayor and what everyone else is saying, the right of the people to be able to respond to numbers that don't pan out. I wanted to ask you what I asked the earlier caller. Do you believe that for those 4-year duration, we, the voters, didn't have a right to choose again? Because I'll finish with this in my question. On November 2nd, 2011, Frank and I, and we did our research, it only would have taken 6 months to do what's called a supplemental EIS.
What's an EIS?
Of an environmental impact statement. So they already
yeah.
found findings of no significant impact on that earlier for a massive karst hole puncher behemoth steel wheel. Yeah. So this tiny little footprint of an urban maglev is not going to be cumbersome or a problem. It's going to be easier than. So the so-called threat, what you just heard in one of those options, caller, that it can't be done, there'll be too much of, what do we do with Kivit? Well, everything that Frank and I and others are talking about, every rail provider, I've been in touch with many around the world, they say they can keep the same system up, they can do the modification, it's all doable. Let's have the hearing.
Aloha. Try to be very brief. I'm recording myself so that I can submit it to the FTA administrator, Therese McMillan herself. I'm here to get clarification, if you don't mind, that when 4 council members just a week ago went to DC on our dime, they went there with a primary cause of a mission to save us money. And they wanted to ask the FTA, can we change the rail system to another rail system? The answer was, you signed a contract on December 19th of 2012 calling for steel wheel on steel rails. One would then deduce that prior to that date, we always had the privilege, right, and opportunity to petition, seek a waiver, and amend a full funding of grant agreement. Final design hadn't even been signed off yet with the FDA. So in 2011, when I went to the city council and introduced a measure to put it back on the ballot, I want to apprise all of you. I don't want to file a lawsuit. But when Governor Lingle spent our money in good faith to commission an independent report that was released on December 2nd of 2010, I was elected 3 weeks after that, and I immediately said, what do we, the public, do? We've been told by our executive branch this thing is $1.7 billion over on the low end, up to $9 billion on the high end. When do we get to weigh in? When do we get to weigh in? So I put it on the ballot of an initiative, of a resolution, and the council member said on November 2nd, 2011, if you advance this and it passes out today on first reading on November 2nd, 2011, the FTA says not only will you go to the end of the line and you forfeit future monies, but you'll have to pay back $200 million to the FTA. Now I'm here to help you. I think whoever gave us that information was false, because if you read Chapter 5 of the FFGA rules, we had the opportunity to ask Congress and the FTA for that privilege. Someone gave us and mischaracterized that FFGA. Culminating why I came here today is I want to ask you a question, I'll come back next month for the answer. At what point in time did we, the taxpayers, forfeit our ability to, after the 2008 vote to go with steel wheel on steel rail, to ask the FTA for a less expensive, more efficient, superior rail transit product available by the FTA to us, the consumer? Lingle's report, FDA says we can't weigh in. You guys are here now dealing with the aftermath of that breach. Let us in, let us vote, let us have another say, make amends, and have, in good faith, restore this FFGA. Because if I do file a lawsuit, it's going to be because you still have refused to answer the question. I want everyone here to know in this room, I've emailed you this question over and over and over. When did the FDA say we lost our right to get a better product without sacrificing a level of service? Reduction of stations, reduction of the distance of the guideway of 20 miles. Nothing is sacrificed. Nothing. The only change is you're putting a different engine on the locomotive. Basically, that's it. And for you folks to tell the taxpayers right now today and explain that we never have and will never have a right to engage with you and say there's a better way to save you money right now. And to this day, I know of 10 rail providers who can build this project for under $5.2 billion and finish the job. Yes.
Excuse me, Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Can you summarize, please?
I will summarize with one other thing on unabated, then I'll move on, is that I am, in November of 2014, asked this body via emails on the right-of-way acquisition. I knew that the right-of-way acquisition was at $90 million, and I asked Director Grabowski how did he come to a figure of $300 million, and I've never got an answer, because in expenditure dollars, the right-of-way of totality was $90 million after hearing after hearing after hearing. And in 2011, in executive session on the Paulette Kalakini case, grilling the attorneys, I asked, what is the total cost for right-of-way acquisition today? And it was $90 million. And 9 council members heard that answer. So somehow, we went from $90 million a month later to a report before the council that we're at $214 million and we're under budget. That doesn't make any sense to me, how we had a budget for right-of-way at $90 million. At every twist and turn, a real estate fund was created by the director with a contingency fund. And it doesn't make sense when Paragon was hired to do the job in 2012 from California. You didn't have the $800,000 to hire them, and you went into the contingency fund to hire Paragon. Lo and behold, in 2014, wrapping up, you found $3.2 million to give Paragon more money. And that $3.2 million you had. You didn't dip into a contingency fund, so you dipped into a contingency fund for $800,000. Something's kittywampus, it's all a miss. Thank you. Wrapping it up. I just said it. It's kittywampus, it's all a miss. There's a better way to do this rail. Stop this steel wheel beast. Mahalo, give us a right to be at this table and get another stab at a vote. FTA won't stop us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berg. There no other...
If everybody says to themselves, when they remember their 8th grade civics class, that the process of a democracy is that when you get new information that may affect the situation, however it may be, we don't have time to define it, but in simplistic terms, when the governor's report was released, it triggered an exercise whereby we, the public, were then to be able to determine how we want to make a decision. We were never allowed an opportunity to make a decision. And if someone asked a Federal Transit Administrator and we said, you know, when Governor Lingle provided this analysis for us that showed and demonstrated that the city's numbers advanced to the Federal Transit Administration are flawed, what's your opinion, FTA? Did we have a right to revisit the governor's analysis and say, we have to find another way? Maybe there is a better way, but let's at least examine it. Did we have the right to examine it? According to Councilmember Anderson and the City Council, when the vote was 8-1, they filed this on first reading because we wanted to make sure that we showed the federal government that there was no lack of confidence. And in my opinion, that is very offensive to me, Rick, and every of your listeners should feel the same.
Should we choose to
the ones who
this
are
project in
it
any
should
way
feel
whatsoever,
a lack of confidence in all of this are the taxpayers.
On Honolulu's part for this project.
The federal government, whether they are confident in us, is not relevant. I am not concerned whether or not they're confident
in what we're going to do. I want to make sure whatever the people are advancing in good faith has been fully exhausted. And at this stage, culminating with hearings today on this very subject matter, I'm hoping people look at the legislative body in the eye and say, you're witnessing a broken treaty right before you. Are you going to be of party to the ink? Are you going to be of party to the ink that goes on something that you know has been advanced in bad faith? Because until the people have had an opportunity to weigh in on the discrepancies and the variances at such stage in time, we must go back to that point in time legally. To answer your question then legally, is that we were not given and afforded that opportunity because misinformation was conveyed that the federal government said, you can't react to the governor's report. You have no right. So if your state executive branch tells you the city's numbers are fudged and can prove it, you, the people, have no right. You've already forfeited your right back in 2008 when you said you're doing steel wheel. That, Rick, to all your listeners on its face value, you got to be scratching your head. Why wouldn't the federal government want to work with us and say, you mean there's a better way?
At that time, back in 2011, obviously with your grave concern, was there anybody else on the council that expressed any concerns about the statements that were made? Subsequent to that, as the years continued, Tom, was there any other agency, individual, representative, elected official, bureaucrat, whatever, that rose up and said, this is patently wrong?
Governor Lingle did. She signed the petition, wanting another vote. She wouldn't sign it off on the EIS. It wasn't because she was dragging her feet. It's because it was the prudent thing to do, because this is a 100-year-plus project that's going to be on our landscape. And to examine something thoroughly, to the degree that she did, was not on her own accord. It was on our accord. And so if we want to dismiss everything that she as our governor did for us to alert us, we could still avert these tax measures today if we merely tell the state legislature, you know what, the city and county of Honolulu never gave the citizens, the voters, the opportunity to weigh on the state, our taxpayers, the general fund, the legislature. You should be concerned. This came from the state side. Do you want to advance a tax on the people knowing that this so-called broken treaty is going to be compounded further? Or do you want to provide relief for the people to say, let's examine, like I mentioned, the new technologies that are out there. I'm not pushing anything, whether it's BRT, reversible expressways, maglev, monorail. Everyone has something to offer. What are we afraid of?
We need another break here. Before we do, you have been exhaustive in communicating with folks at the FTA. Teresa, or is it Therese McMillan, the administrator?
That's the one that recently engaged with the 4 council members who went to D.C. to ask the very question. Isn't it odd, Rick, that in 2011, as you heard, it was definitive, 100% can't do it. And now, 2015, they need to do an emergency, expend our tax dollars, fly to D.C. and ask the exact same question. Now, the answer that they got extrapolated from FTA administrators was, you know what? Your contract that you signed in December of 2012 calls for steel wheel on steel rail, which again solidifies and substantiates my entire claim that up until 2012, you have the FTA in the news just in the last week with the 4 council members affirming that it wasn't until the contract was signed, you always, according to the rules, could have found and requested for a waiver, for a petition, for relief, like you're going to have to do on your operational date, because you can't meet that operational date that's in the contract. You're already going to have to do triage on this thing and ask for congressional support and approval.
The question that you pose, on what date did Honolulu forfeit its right to solicit the FTA and or Congress for the ability to petition for a waiver that includes an amendment to the FFGA to change one rail system with another rail system and not be penalized for pursuing that change? This question has been oft submitted, and apparently without a specific definitive response from the feds. Is that correct?
And again, yes, but it is because, in my opinion, they're looking at us and saying it's your venue, it's your jurisdiction, it's your interaction internally, you have home rule. If you guys in your charter says your city council can put it up to a vote, which they can today, and you got 9 council members that won't put it up to a vote, you should be disgusted. Yeah. If you got 76 legislators, a few of them are voting no on this thing. Good for them. But if you got an advancement of this, is that I look at it again, boy, 150 years ago, if I were alive, 200 years ago, how would I have engaged on a broken treaty? What would have I had done? Would I want to rectify it? And we all talk about in the history books, wow, this was a bad deal. Somebody didn't pan out good for them. Well, it's happening right now before our very eyes. Why isn't it that all of us are saying this is a bad treaty? In other words, who's getting the bad deal? Every taxpayer is getting the bad deal.
Former City Councilman Tom Berg in studio with us. Tom, to contact you again, how do we do so?
Hey, I'd appreciate it if anybody would like to contact me at tomberg00@yahoo.com, please.
We'll take a short break. We'll come back. I encourage you, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, observations, would like to chat with Tom or at least give your reaction to the information that you've been presented so far, we'll open up some time in the final moments that we have together with Tom Berg in studio here on News Radio 749. Our time is coming to an end with Tom Berg, but we do want to make sure that Dennis from the Big Island, Dennis, thank you for your call. You're on with Tom Berg. Good morning to you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your work and presenting the light of day on this rather big train wreck about to happen, and thank you, Tom, for your work, and please keep it up. Unfortunately, this is only a symptom of what's going on in our nation today. And it's all about drugs, and the drug is money, and the pusher is the government, either local, state, or federal. And until the population of Hawaii and the rest of our country wakes up and realizes that we cannot afford what we don't have money for, no matter how great it is, we will pay dearly in the future, and the country will die because of it. You can't print money out of nothing, and we must, as citizens, realize no matter how great a program is, if we don't have the money, we must not do it. We can't do it at home, we can't do it locally, we can't do it statewide, and we can't do it federally.
We do appreciate it. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Dennis. Right on point. Tom, thoughts?
Again, this broken treaty is that the caller is absolutely correct. In 2012, when the full funding grant agreement was signed, we had already done a $450 million line of credit that was never to be parlayed. We raised the debt service ceiling, never to be parlayed. We took transit operations from 11-18%, never to be parlayed. And then Governor Lingle in her report in 2010 says, nice try, guys. Your hundreds of $1 million in rating from the federal bus funds ain't going to pan out. Guess what? 5 years later, the council got caught with its hand in the cookie jar trying to do the same, and it ain't going to fly again. So guess what? They've got that small little contingency of a few $100 million to pay back off that they've taken from the bus. But the caller is absolutely correct, is that when the full funding grant agreement was brokered, it had morphed into so many different variables that it all really boils down to one simple thing. Do we or do we not have the right to weigh in? Right now, the legislature is bargaining with the counties.
If the legislative body, which they have subpoena powers, the Senate needs to ask Councilmember Anderson to disclose the source. Before they advance any kind of attacks, that would be the first relief I would ask in any kind of a lawsuit. Yes.
We do have time for another call once coming in, but I want to make sure that folks understand where we are. We have some time with Tom Berg. Glenn, good morning. There is
good morning. I have a question. In simple terms,
in regard, now, is there a lawsuit that's going to be filed, Tom? Is that what the next logical step is for you?
The cost of rail.
The City Council gets 2 budgets every year from the Honoulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, HART. One's a CIP budget, capital improvement projects. The other one's operation. And if you recall, when they said HART was to come on board in 2010, it wouldn't cost you anything. Well, their budget's just $22 million to rent the building, basically, and turn on the lights. So the answer is that monetary expense in any form or fashion goes to the City Council. They hold the purse strings. If you recall, Carlisle at the time, the mayor, it was a veto back and forth of an override. The mayor says, no, let HART, they can do what they want, give them a blank check. We, the people, won. The council voted 9-0, overrode the mayor. Says, look, if HART's going to be a runaway train, there's got to be some way to slow them down. And that's when this comes up this spring, when the budget comes up. If you don't like what HART's doing, we could stop it at that venue as well.
One of the things Mayor Carlisle did say, it doesn't matter about federal money. It doesn't matter. We're doing this thing. It doesn't matter. I remember that. Tom, it's been one heck of a visit. I'd like for you, in about 30 seconds, put a little bow on our conversation. Last message to our listeners.
We've never given up the right. We never forfeited our abilities. We never relinquished or let anything lapse, folks. All we have to do is let everyone out there know who's a policymaker. We want a seat at the table. Let's ask for it, and let's get there, and let's sit down, and let's all parlay and get a better rail system for all of us.
Contact info again, Tom?
Tom Berg, 00@yahoo.com.
Many thanks for taking the time today, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And we'll continue with more of the Rick Amato program coming up after the top of the hour. And again, contact Tom for more information, and we'll be sure to disseminate it here. We'll be back right after Fox News.
Didn't pan out, and guess who eats it and makes up the difference? The taxpayer. And so at this time, I'm going to conclude with there's no mechanism in here, there's no language. I know you can't hold future councils accountable for this, but there should be something in here that says we guarantee there'll be no property tax. None. There will absolutely, once you go down on this, there will be no coming back and raising property taxes. And if you don't know and you're not sure, then this isn't a good deal. Because right now, I think it's more important we be able to flush our toilet, pay that sewer EPA mandate, and that's the issue at hand. This is a nice-to-have project, and if it were monorail, if it were maglev, it'd be a third of the price. We could go to UH Waikiki. It would be a better bang for your buck. But the steel wheel, steel rail, archaic behemoth, noisy, is not the solution.
My understanding is that a percentage of the administrative fee, of 10% being collected, is being entertained in this process, whereby, whether it's for TODs or what have you, is that the comment being made is that if this bill were to pass, Senate Bill 19, the state constitution says you can't levy a tax that makes money off the people. So the administrative fee is on its face value not doable. The full funding grant agreement is flawed. And in closing, everyone here, when you chair say, what's the council going to do for people? The people have never had a chance to sit at this table and say, I want maglev, I don't want rail, I want to hear, and I believe the governor, for you guys to raise this tax in closing without letting us, the people, vote on it. When we had the right in 2011 to vote on it and we were told we didn't have the right, look up the picture dictionary and you'll find your names in it if you vote yes to this bill.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?